As soon as I turn on Clifton Avenue, he comes out of the laundromat, starts shooting at another gang member kind of across the street. So I jump out of the car in the middle of the street. He starts shooting at me, and I end up returning fire, and I hit him 3 times. And it got so quiet, and I run over to him. And here's the thing with being a gang investigator. You get to know these kids. You get to know these guys. And this may be kind of a weird thing, but there's not a lot of difference between a gang member and a police officer, except for our end game.
This episode was sponsored by Medical. Every veteran deserves respect, competency, and clarity when pursuing a disability claim. Of course, we all know the frustration is much more common. If you're looking for a better path and documentation that strengthens your disability rating request, start with our sponsor, Medical. Re's team of professionals work with a network of experienced physicians, and they've already provided meaningful medical evidence for more than 25,000 veterans. And while they can't guarantee what the VA will decide, 95%, let me say that again, 95% of their clients reported receiving a disability rating of 70% or higher. That's because when you connect with Medical, they take the time to explain your options before you pay for anything. Free consultations. So don't give up on a stalled process or settle for an unfavorable decision from the VA. Cut through the frustration with accurate medical evidence and a streamlined approach that allows you to pursue your claim confidently. Head over to remedical.com, that's Romeo Echo Echo medical.com to book your free consultation. Check out our link in the podcast section for more details. Welcome to another episode, and I am joined today by the great, the incredible Gerry Hyder, Lieutenant.
Yeah, Lieutenant.
Lieutenant Hyder.
Yeah,
right, I'm learning, so please
sure.
Bear with me.
Well, it's different than military. We get that a lot, like the ranking system, because I never was in the military. One of my regrets, actually, not joining the service, but an officer in the military
that's the lowest
in the military.
Well, and lieutenant's the first level of officer,
right? But as an officer in police, it's just that's where you start. Then sergeant, then lieutenant, then captain, commander, inspector, deputy chief, assistant chief. So
yeah, it's completely different.
It is.
Yeah, you've been doing it for a while.
Yeah,
but I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to talk about your book. Was it Smoking Gun in Music City?
Smoking Gun in Music City. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was fun. It was quite an adventure for that.
Yeah, your whole life's been quite an adventure.
It's been. It has been. It really has.
Yeah.
It's fun.
But let's get into it.
Okay, let's talk about it.
I want to know.
I was born at a young age.
You're born at a young age?
Yeah.
Most are.
Tell
me where you're from.
So I'm from here. I'm from Nashville.
Like really?
Like
from
a unicorn.
Nashville?
Yeah, unicorn. Went to school here, elementary, McMurray Middle School, Overton High School.
Wow, you really are from here.
Yeah, I am from here. My kid, 15-year-old kid, he goes to Overton now, and all the fields and auditoriums are named after my teachers. That's what's kind of weird. I go in there and the Stanford Auditorium is the principal that I had when I was in high school. So it makes you feel real old.
Yeah.
But
what was it like growing up in Nashville?
It was obviously a lot different. It was a lot different than 10 years ago. My dad was a fireman.
Okay.
For almost 30 years here in Nashville.
Was he on the fire service here?
Yeah, in Nashville. So I grew up, in the fire halls and in the midst of that. And a lot of people don't know this. Back in like the late 70s, the fire department had a strike. They went on strike here in Nashville.
What for?
I guess pay or something. I was young. I was probably 7 or 8. But I do remember the National Guard had to come in and answer the calls, and firemen were picketing out in front of the fire halls. It was
no way.
Yeah, it was surreal. And as a young kid, you don't understand why that would happen. But I can certainly understand it now. Of course, there's a lot of factors involved with that. The I call it the Great Flood, but the flood of I guess 79. Wiped. My dad's fire station was over on Antioch Pike. 7 foot of water. They went on a fire call. They came back and it was 7 foot of water in the fire hall. So. Like those things happen in Nashville. It's the history of Nashville that is lost a lot of times. Even beyond that, you go back beyond that to all the stuff that happened during the civil rights movements and all the stuff that's pivotal in Nashville. Big historian buff when it comes to Nashville.
Tell me about the flood. I don't know. I'm from Memphis. I grew up in Memphis. I live here now. Try and get like a fist. It's okay.
That's all right. So I'm gonna guess and say 78 or 79. I know it was in the late 70s.
Yeah.
It rained for 40 days and 40 nights, I guess. I don't know how long it rained.
Animals were lined up two by two, yeah.
But I do remember we lived over in South Nashville, and there was a creek that ran behind our house that always flooded its banks, and I was pretty worried that it was going to consume our house, even though it was probably from the back door to that creek was probably about 100 yards. It was quite a ways, but it got pretty bad. But then, the whole city just kind of. It wasn't like the flood of 2010.
I wasn't here for that, but my family was.
Yeah, so the flood of 2010, which was devastating, it was just it was different parts of town. But I remember Antioch specifically got just decimated.
Really?
A lot of trailer parks and over there where the fire hall was.
Yeah.
I remember my dad, like all his gear was just flooded, and luckily they weren't in the fire station when it filled up, but they had to go back in and wade through, and they spent probably 2 or 3 days straight just saving people from.
That's crazy.
Water. Yeah, it's nuts, and I think it's stories like that, or not stories, but I guess moments or events like that happen that they're traumatic at the time, but sometimes you forget about the people that are involved with that, and not just first responders or police or firemen, but just ordinary people. I think if we go back and look at 2010 and the flood that happened there's numerous of stories of people that just jumped in. That's the thing about Nashville. I mean, we talked about growing up in Nashville. It's always been, in my opinion, a place where people take ownership and they want to jump in and they want to help out.
That's very
for the
true.
most part. And I think maybe that's the volunteer state. Maybe that's that ideology that comes from years ago. But I think just that Southern charm's always been around. It still is. And I think we forget that, the majority of people in this city and even this country are good people. In my job, in my profession, and I think, EMS or fire department, one of the stigmas of that is we only deal with people that are having issues.
The worst day of their life.
Right. And so if you get early on, I think we talked about before we started here, early on when you start this job, you build this thought that everybody is just horrible, and because that's all you deal with all day long. You're going to calls, you're going to fights, or you're going to thefts or domestics or whatever it is. You build this opinion in your mind that everybody's just horrible, and you really have to fight that. And that takes about a good 4 or 5 years, I think,
to shake
this
it.
job to kind of realize. I call it the 80-20 principle, and maybe that's something I stole from somewhere else. I don't recall where I devised this from, but usually about 20% of whatever it is. Let's say a housing development, or a school, or even a community. 20% cause 80% of the problems. The same 20% cause 80% of the problems. So if you think about it in this way,
that makes sense.
If you have let's say you have a high school, and you're a SRO or you're a teacher at the high school, you can identify those few children, those few kids that are the problem kids. They're usually the same ones.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with those over and over and over.
Yeah.
So in police work, let's say a community, a neighborhood, there's usually the same individuals that are causing the same problems. 20% of those people are causing 80% of those problems. And I think one thing that, and I'll speak for Nashville here, one thing that we've done that's been so fantastic over the last 4 or 5 years, especially with this new administration, is the old way of policing was what we called hotspot policing. Been around for years, where you have a neighborhood that's crime-ridden, a lot of problems, a lot of thefts, a lot of thefts of motor vehicles, whatever. We would saturate that area.
Just like a presence.
Just flood cars in there. You
Yeah.
stop everybody that's walking. You get out. But what we found is that we're harassing people that are not the problem. We're harassing that 80% that just want to live and breathe and have a barbecue and have their kids play. So what we've done here, and I really credit the new administration here, is we do what's called precision policing now. Now we target that 20%. Now we just go after that 20%. So I'm not driving through a neighborhood and seeing someone and thinking, let me stop and see if they live here. I know who they are because I'm out of my car, I'm talking to them. And that's night and day of the things that have happened just in our city. And I think, we're building a reputation here and across the country. We're building a reputation here that is one of not trying to to just throw a blanket over the problem. We're trying to pinpoint that problem and resolve it.
Yeah.
That's what's really cool.
No, I mean, you said so many things that like really resonate with me. Like, you know, just in particular, like everyone stepping in, like the flood. So I was in Afghanistan on my second tour, and I heard Nashville flooded.
In 2010.
In 2010, May. And I saw like printed off photos, because that was how all we get, of like Nissan Stadium and, and everything. And my wife actually ended up having to park a car up the road and like wade. Her and my mother had to wade with my children through it. But, you know, my father-in-law has always done general contracting, and he always talks about how at the Gaylord, the one area where they have the walkway, I can't remember what, the Delta, whatever.
Yeah, over at Opryland,
Yeah, Delta Cat, whatever part of it is.
Right.
How it was just flooded. And so every time I go there, I'm like, I can't imagine this. But he actually got in a boat and just started like going around, went through the mall and everything.
One of my first...
people just stepped up.
Yeah. Well, so, you know, we all got called in. But one of my first fixed posts during that was right at Briley Parkway, right where you go into Opry Mills.
Yeah.
And that just blocked traffic.
Yeah.
But I remember, obviously, it was an overnight shift. I was working. Power was off everywhere. But the helicopter, our helicopter was up because there were people in kayaks trying to kayak into the Opry Mills Mall and load up their kayaks with merchandise, because it's all floating around, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think our SWAT team, SRT, had to go in the boats and kind of patrol those areas. It's just stuff like that. It's amazing to think about, but it's just... That's what happens.
And we live in a very big city. It's not, you know, it's not like in the middle of nowhere, like, but the whole place just got wiped clean.
Yeah. And then my last probably 4 or 5 days of those assignments was a day shift right at 2nd and Broadway downtown, which is just surreal because everything was just shut down.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're just looking around at the devastation and thinking, how are we ever going to recover from this? You know?
I mean, ultimately, I think it's the thing that actually protected Nashville through the housing recession and all the stuff that happened afterwards.
It did.
Was the flood, the literal flood of money that came in repairs and insurance stuff.
Well, just and not to skip fast forward, but the tornado of 2020 that came through right before the pandemic and all the stuff that happened in the summer of 2020, but that really changed the makeup of North Nashville.
Yeah.
Because it came through and wiped out a lot of older houses, and then
I forgot about that.
And then what happened was contractors came in, and now we have more Airbnbs in North Nashville than we've ever had, and it's changing the whole dynamic of that side of town.
A place that didn't have any of that.
No, it didn't.
I mean, me and a bunch of my friends with Team Rubicon, the veterans organization that responds to emergency assistance, disasters in particular. We all went up there and we're like, it was gnarly. I hadn't seen anything like that in a while. And it was so weird too, because everyone's like, oh, you know, I don't want to say any words that get us in trouble, but like, we were just out there trying to help people. And it like brought me to tears, some of it, seeing like, I hadn't seen people doing stuff together like that in a while. I didn't realize that till that happened, actually.
I think what's interesting, and this may have been where you were going with this, but when normal people face tragedy, and in my job, obviously, I see that a lot, but when you see just normal, everyday people that just living their life, and then something traumatic happens, they all respond differently. I mean, military, police, you know, we were thrust in those situations very young, and sometimes, and so we learn how to deal with them, and we were able to, I guess, keep our composure for the most part, or even suppress those thoughts for the most part. But normal people, citizens, everyday, average day people, it's amazing to see the differences in their mentality.
Yeah.
You know, in a 20-year career, this is something that David Kennington, who works with our professional wellness unit, is a fantastic guy over there. But he talks about the mental health of police and also military and first responders. But a 20-year career for a normal citizen, let's say a banker or a school teacher or something that's just a normal job, whatever. Probably in 20 years, they'll see 2 critical incidents. They'll encounter 2 critical incidences, whether it be a horrendous wreck that they come upon or one that they're in, a house fire of some sort. Yeah. For law enforcement and even military, I'm fired 700 in 20 years.
That's
700.
That's gnarly.
It's not normal, is what it's not.
No, it's not.
You know, and I think which kind of goes back into our mental health. You know, I mean it's always been a topic. I mean, you go back to, I'm sure we could go back to the First World War, but you go back to the Second World War, go back to Vietnam War, go back to Korean War.
Mm.
You know, you got these guys and these kids that are thrust into all that stuff, and then no compassion for their mental wellness.
No compassion, and you know, we're real binary in the sense as a society, I think globally, that we really want 2 + 2 = 4, not 2 + 2 = 4 to 6 months of therapy.
On some things we are,
Yeah.
but on some things we're so ridiculous that
Yeah.
we just accept that it doesn't equal 4.
Yeah.
But the things that I feel like matter, like our mental health,
Yeah.
you know, I think we put on really good optics a lot of time in this, and I really don't want to get real political, but we put on a lot of optics in this country about how much we care about mental health. But when it comes down to it, are we really taking those steps? And I will say this for Nashville, over the last 10 years, man, that's something that is really taking the forefront.
Yeah.
Is the mental health of the officers that are out here putting themselves through this every day. And I can't speak to that point enough that there's just an overwhelming need for that little bit of consideration on what this job does to us. And I think Nashville's doing a great job when it comes to that.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I hope to do here. I mean, we've been trying to do
I
it.
think it is. It's very therapeutic. I mean, even to sit here and talk about this, and we mentioned this before, like when you're brand new and you're a cop and you want people to ask what you do, like you go to a party and you're like, oh God, I wish somebody asked me what I do, you know?
Yeah.
And then they do, they're, oh, well, you know, I'm a police officer. And then you get to a point where you don't want to talk about it at all.
Yeah.
You don't want to tell anybody. You hope to God nobody even mentions it. But by that time, everybody's introducing you. Hey, this is my buddy Jerry's a cop. And the whole part of the record skips and the whole party shuts down.
Yeah.
Everybody, you know.
Well, I pay your taxes. I pay for your job.
Or, you know, my favorite one is, you know, like, well, what's the worst thing you've ever seen in your job?
You can't tell those stories.
Yeah, like,
everyone thinks that you can, like, it'll be like lighthearted, like the criminal fell into like and bubblegum caught him on the thing. It's like, no, he like crossed 4 lanes of the interstate and caused like a multi-car pileup and everything lit on fire.
It's actually very, I can tell you this. And so to this point, excuse me. So my kid, I have one son, 15. He's a great kid, takes so much after his mother. He's fantastic. But he's about to start driving. You know, it's that scary moment that I'm
in the same boat, actually.
Terrified, dude.
It's a nightmare,
especially coming from my experiences day in and day out. And you know, his whole life has been, you know, he's a great kid, but the decisions that I make are always based on my experiences, you know. But I trust him and he's a good kid. But we talk about driving and I tell him stories all the time, but the one that I tell him the most is the most horrendous thing. My very first thing that I saw as a young officer was a single car crash involving a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old. 2 boys driving ridiculous, you know, and lost control, hit a telephone pole, spun around. And I arrived first, and there's probably 20 onlookers, 20 people standing around, and both these boys are deceased. They're both dead. One of them's in the yard, one of them's hanging halfway out of the car, and the people are like, do something. I'm like, I don't know if there's anything I can do, you know? Those are the stories that people ask, what's the most horrific thing you've ever seen?
Yeah.
I don't want to tell you that story.
No.
You know? And even that was a tame version of it. You know what I'm saying? But I tell him that. I'm like, these are the things that go through my mind when you start driving. It's not you.
When he puts it in reverse.
Yeah, it's not you. It's everything else that could happen. But that goes back to our mental health and being able to sustain that for 23 years I've been doing it. So.
Well, I mean, you're speaking on so many things, especially like I always say the blessing curse of trauma. The curse is the knowledge, the blessing is understanding it. Yeah. Right? Because you've seen what can happen and it changes your perspective and it gives you, I think trauma gives you a gift. It just takes a while to understand it because you do really understand how precious time, life, and these moments are. But
I think you said it there too. It's about how you see trauma. Do you see it as a gift?
Yeah.
Or do you see it as a curse? And I think that comes back to your own perspective and your own inner monologue of how you deal with life, you know, and taking things that clearly look like a negative and trying to see them as a positive.
Yeah.
And I think that's gosh, if we need to have a class on that, like, you know, a one-on-one conversion of trauma to positive thinking, you know. Maybe you should do that. Maybe that should be your next podcast.
I'll try.
Like,
I'm down because I need all the help I can get.
yeah.
But you've been so you grew up in Nashville.
Nashville, yeah.
And then where'd you go next?
Okay, so some people know this, some people don't, but
Is this breaking news?
no, not really.
Okay. This is breaking news here on the podcast.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, heard it here first.
So I was an artist growing up. That's pretty much what I did
Okay.
on all my free time. I taught myself piano and guitar. Well, not guitar growing up. I mean, I learned that later on. But piano, drawing. That was the only way I knew to woo women when I was young. Was I would draw pictures of them.
Yeah.
Give them pictures, and you know, write songs and stuff. But the problem was I was just too nice. And you know how that goes. I was the nice guy that you know was always the nice guy. Plus, here's the big fact. When I entered 9th grade, I was 4'10".
Okay.
So I was tiny.
Yeah.
I was a kid.
Yeah.
And my sister was a senior in high school, and all her senior friends, mostly the men that were there, and I call them men because they look like men, would, you know, pick me up by my ankles and shove me into lockers, all the stuff that was permitted back then.
Yeah.
So I was tiny, I was talented, did a lot of art and stuff. So really didn't really know what I wanted to do. But I got a scholarship to Savannah College of Art and Design in Savannah, Georgia. And so I went there, didn't know a soul there, 8.5 hours away from Nashville. First time I'd ever really been away from Nashville. And left and never looked back, man. I mean, I did look back. Obviously, I'm here now. But
yeah.
But for the moment, I was there and made some great friends there and fell into some fortunate connections there and got involved with the movie business. My college roommate
in Savannah.
Well, no, here's the ironic thing. This is crazy, but so my college room, when I went to SCAD, I didn't know anybody. I had a friend here. He's like, hey, I got a friend who's got a friend that's going there. You should find him. He's from Nashville.
Okay.
All right. So I did, and we ended up being best friends, still are to this day, and we're roommates together. But his dad made all the Ernest movies, like Ernest Goes to School, Ernest Goes to Jail, Ernest Plays Basketball, whatever. Dude. I think there's like 12 or 15.
There's a ton of them. I watched a few of them on Hulu or something. I can't remember.
So John Cherry's his name. Josh Cherry's my friend's name. John Cherry, and John really gave me a break in the fact that Josh had one summer in college. Josh had his dad had finagled him an internship out in L.A. with a subsidiary of Mattel Toys. Mm-hmm. And Josh's like, hey, you want to go to L.A.? I'm like, yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do, but yeah. And through the course of that, I was able to land an internship out there with another toy company for the summer. And then Josh's dad's like, hey, why don't you guys come up to Vancouver? We're shooting a picture up here and see. And so we went up there and worked on a picture up there. It was amazing. It was like
worked on a picture.
Yeah, worked on a movie up there.
What movie?
Ernest Goes to School.
You were in Ernest Goes to School?
As an extra, I was in it, but I worked through the prop department, which was amazing. But
hey, Vern.
Yeah. So, do you know Will Sasso?
Yes.
Okay, so Will was in that, but he was 16 years old.
Shut up.
And Will and we got to be pretty good friends back then. And here's a funny story. So in Vancouver, there's a lot of islands, obviously around. Yeah. And one of the prop guys had a cabin on an island. He's like, hey, let's go out for the weekend. No electricity, but there's a cabin. So me and Josh and Will Sasso and two of the prop guys would go out on this boat, and it's dark. We get out there. We have to row this little dinghy to the island. Like you had to park the boat 100 yards off the island. So we're sitting around the campfire, and Will's like, hey, let's go. And Will's from Vancouver.
Yeah, he's from Canada.
Right. He's from Vancouver. He's like, hey, let's go feed the orchids. Feed the whales. I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah, he's like, no, I'm serious. The water is phosphorus. So he and I go down and get on this dinghy. And Will wasn't a small kid then. I mean, he was 16, but he was close to 300 pounds there. He's a big kid. Funniest person I ever met in real life. I'm going to tell you that right now. We get on this boat and we start rowing out. And there's like about that much clearance between the water and the top of the boat. He's like, just so you know, I can't swim.
He said that?
Yeah. I'm like, well, that's good. Did you tell me that now? Well, we get out on the boat, we start throwing marshmallows over to seals and like, I don't know if it was orchids, but it scared the crap out of me because it was like all these creatures coming around.
Just started coming.
And
they like marshmallows?
Eating marshmallows, yeah.
They say that about alligators too.
Yeah.
I bet they do.
I guess. But had a great time that summer up there with the shooting the movie. And what's her name? Sarah Chalk. It was on Scrubs.
Yeah.
She was in the movie. She was 15 or 16 then.
Talking about one of my crushes growing up.
Yeah, she was super nice.
I mean,
super
like
nice.
now.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Scrubs, she was scrubbing the dust off my heart,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah. Like, so there's a lot of, and then of course Jim Varney is just amazing. People don't realize how smart that guy was. I mean, it was just surreal. I remember the first time I saw Jim, I walked in and he was getting his hand measured for some gag that they were doing in the movie, and he was. And he had longer hair, had earrings, wore a lot of earrings and longer hair, and
he was like a hippie, right?
Like a lot of jewelry and leather jacket stuff. And you're like, that's Ernest, man.
Yeah, yeah.
But that propelled that summer propelled me into thinking that's kind of what I want to do. And then
you wanted to be in the film industry.
Yeah, I was
when it was good,
doing a little bit of acting, some comedic acting and stuff down in Savannah, and then the summer of. I guess it was 95. I was lost as far as I graduated college, didn't know what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard with a degree in advertising and design to get a job at that time. And so I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'll join the police department.
That was your next thought?
That was the thought in 95, right? This is 95.
I'm not knocking it. We're jumping. You go Ernest.
Well, yeah.
You go college, Ernest, police.
But I still, I'm like, I want to do the acting stuff. I really want to do because I had this creative bone. You had that creative bone. You want to do that.
Oh, you're sitting in my creative bone.
Yeah. Exactly.
This is it. Yeah.
So I applied for the police department. At the same time, Josh's dad calls me and says, "Hey, listen, I'm shooting a television show, and I want you to audition for it."
Okay.
It's a kids show, you know. At the time, they were doing Big Comfy Couch. Do you remember that show? It's a while back, but
it's
a kid show.
Yeah.
They're like, we want to do this other show, and bear with me here. And the name of the show is Winky Dink. Now, I had the same look on my face when he told me that, but Winky Dink was a show from the 50s.
Okay.
An old show from the 50s. And they wanted to revamp it. And the idea was, we want to put this piece of plastic over the TV screen, and we want to have these dry erase markers or crayons, and we want the kids to draw on the plastic on the TV screen, and so the actors on the screen are going to interact with what they draw. That was the idea, right?
So we can ruin the TV screens and sell TVs. Yeah.
It was a gimmick, you know.
Yeah.
It was 95.
Yeah.
You know, what are you going to do? No cell phone, no smartphones.
Yeah. Did it come out?
Smartphones were probably, no, they didn't come out then.
No, I mean Winky Dink.
No. So here's what happened. So he says, we're going to shoot 3 pilot episodes, and I want you to be in it.
Nice.
And Josh, my best friend, he was going to play the other guy. So we were going to do this
left hand, right.
Yeah. It was like this Dumb and Dumber kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I was excited to, but here's the problem. I got accepted to the police department.
Okay.
The same day that the show was supposed to shoot. So I'm like, I got to make a choice here. So I chose to do the show, obviously. I'm like, I'm gonna be an actor. I'm gonna make millions. I'm gonna be an actor. So I didn't go. I didn't show up to the police department. I didn't go.
Yeah.
To my interview. But I didn't care. I was like, yes, you know, I finally made my break. You know, we shot the pilot. It was fantastic. It was fun. I had to wear this Oompa Loompa wig. It's funny. And we shot it over on Dickerson Pike. It was called Spear Communications then. It's a studio still. I don't remember what it's called now, but it's right there at Briley and Dickerson. It's a whole big studio. And matter of fact, my picture's still on the wall of that place if you go in there in that stupid headpiece. But
that's awesome.
So we shot it, and it never got picked up. Big Comfy Couch took off, and they never pushed it through.
Big Comfy Couch. I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah, it's like a girl that has like these big red marks on her face, and she's like a doll kind of looking thing.
She had red hair.
I don't know.
Not red hair.
Ponytails, and there's a lot of puppets and stuff in. It's a great kid show. I mean, it's perfect. But anyway, so I regretted it every day that I didn't go to the police department after that. I was
Really?
like, man, because I would see, because the way it, when you go through the academy, it's like back then it was like 24 months in the academy, and then you have like 6 months of probation that you ride with another officer.
Mm-hmm.
And Nashville's never been a 2-car officer police department. Like we always only have a single officer in a car, unless you're a trainee in a FTO. And I knew that because I researched, just like everything I do, I researched so much before I even put in for the police department. I researched all this stuff. So every time I would see 2 officers together, I'm like, oh, that would be me. I would be 3 months into my probation. I'd be on my own by now, So at the same time, my buddy Josh and then my other college roommate named Jim, and I'll talk about Jim here in a moment with the book, but we decided we were going to do this comedy show on the internet. Now, listen, this is 95, okay?
Yeah.
96.
Yeah.
We're going to do this comedy show. We're going to put videos on the internet.
Yeah.
YouTube wasn't even around then.
No.
Right?
The internet was hand cranked then.
Oh my gosh, it was horrible. We're talking about CompuServe and AOL.
Yeah, and there's another one that doesn't exist. Vista, Alta Vista.
Alta Vista, yeah,
Alta
of
Vista,
course.
yeah, it's gone now.
So we started filming these comedy skits, and they were good. I thought they were real good. They were
Yeah,
funny.
yeah.
Jim, my buddy Jim, was a fantastic writer, comedy writer. He was so good. Josh is like just hilarious. I mean, he's very funny. And I kind of played the straight guy, and, but we had all these videos, but we didn't know how to do it. We did not know how to put it on there. We were years before. If we'd have done that, if we'd have had that idea and the internet was like it is now, we'd probably be popular.
But where would you put it?
So our idea was, because Josh was
you film it, shoot it, edit it, and then what do you do with it?
Well, we were going to make a website.
Okay.
And it was called Monkey Bites.
Monkey Bites.
Monkey Bites.
Was it spelled like B-E-T?
I think it was like B-I-T-E-S.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was B-Y-T-E-S.
Yeah, something like that.
Monkeybites.com. And I remember the first little thing, it had like a little curtain that would open up, and then it was, try to show the videos, and they were just horrible, like the quality of them.
Yeah.
Because we were so ahead of what we were doing. We were doing the same kind of skits at like The State. Do you remember the show The State?
Oh my God, yeah.
The State, and then
wow, you really are like a creative arts guy.
like Kids in the Hall.
Yeah, I was about to say, you're about to say Kids in the Hall, aren't you? Yeah. That was early stuff. That was when Comedy Central had value.
Right,
Yeah.
when MTV had music.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Crazy.
But that's the kind of the stuff that influenced us, and it was that creative juices, and I always felt at home with that.
Yeah.
So that just never took off, and just because we couldn't get it off the ground because we didn't know what we were doing and didn't have the technology really to do it.
You're talking about all this stuff, and I'm looking at some of it now. When I think about what I loved the idea of the Kids in the Hall and The State and all of them. The State, which
like Reno 911. I mean,
Reno,
hilarious.
That they're all doing improv there too.
Yeah.
But what I love the most about it is that I know they're making something, but the thing I love the most is that as soon as like the camera's cut, they're all making a living hanging out with their friends.
Oh yeah.
Which is probably the best.
It's the best thing you can do.
The best thing you can do no matter what. Like in any profession or anything at all, if you can like make a living hanging out with people, and then on top of it, you're like doing something fun and creative.
But I feel the same way sometimes with what I do. There's a lot of times like...
that's why I miss the military, honestly.
Yeah.
I was talking to my old squad leader about it, and it's why he's in law enforcement now, and it's one of the things, he's like, we literally spend every day together.
Yeah.
And like, that's probably the best part.
When we work extra jobs, I work a lot of the Preds games and Titans games, and got to work Titans games tomorrow, those kind of things. It's pretty much you just kind of hanging out with your buddies, and especially the Preds game, because you have to be in the bowl kind of watching the crowd and watching the game. You're just kind of hanging there watching the game, and then things come up. You deal with what you got to deal with, and you kind of go right back into
sit
it.
down.
And you always get those people going, "Oh, you must have a hard job. This must be hard for you." Well, it's not until it is. That's the thing. The police department, security, working security at those places, and even day to day, we're just an insurance policy, really. If somebody wants to do badness, if somebody wants to do destruction at Bridgestone Arena, there's probably nothing we can really do to prevent that. We can try to make it harder, but you got to have people in there that can deal with it when it happens. you know?
Yeah.
I always joke around by saying we're kind of like an insurance policy on an antique car that sits in your garage. You don't think you need it, and you spend money on it. You go, I should really get rid of that policy. I don't do anything. And then a tree falls on your garage, and you don't have it.
You're like,
you know?
Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea at all.
I think that's kind of, a lot of times, could be the misconception that people have about, well, we don't want to spend all this money to have police officers standing around and doing nothing. We're not really doing nothing.
It's called deterrence.
Deterrence. Visibility is deterrence.
Yeah.
But in the event that something traumatic happens, you got to have people there that can handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a great example of that, I'm not picking at this because of the situation, but we all watched with the Buffalo Bills with the player that passed out on the field, and
yes,
and they had to treat him on the field. And
Lamar Hamlin,
I think.
Yeah,
and I remember watching that and seeing the response by those men on the field.
Yeah,
not the first responders, not the ambulance, not the doctors, but the football players.
Yeah.
Some of them, and they all handled it differently.
Yeah.
And if you go back, and I think if you go back and you look at that, you see some of them just go to the sidelines and just start warming up. They don't know what else to do to get their mind off of it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them kneeling down and praying to their gods and trying to find some resolution for it. Some of them crying. Some of them just in a daze walking around with this look on their face. These are men, good men, that have never probably in that capacity been faced with that kind of tragedy.
Yeah.
But you look at the first responders that are there.
Yeah.
They're going to business. They're going to work. They're doing their job.
Time to start compressions.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's that mentality of, I don't expect people to be able to handle those situations because we have the training to do that. And for the most part, and I can speak for the men and women in this department, there's not a one here at Covenant School that wouldn't have ran in first. I guarantee you. The guys that got there first performed phenomenally, but I have no doubt that any of us, would have done that.
Yeah.
And I was there. I got there probably just as the last, I guess, the ambulance was leaving, and just horrific scene and horrific events. But man, I was so proud. I mean, of the way we responded to that, and of the way that we came together as a city, really, and dealt with that situation. And unfortunately, we're gonna have to do it again. I mean, it's just those things happen so often.
Yeah.
You know? And we've been training for that one day for 20 years. We've been doing those active killer trainings for so long. It's just a part of our DNA now in this department. And so I wasn't surprised at how those guys handled themselves and the way that they displayed our professionalism was just amazing.
Above reproach.
Oh my gosh! I mean, it's just you couldn't ask for any better.
No.
That's why we got the best department in the world. I really believe it.
Yeah.
Not because of Covenant, just because of the training and because of the men and women that are here. And
I've met a lot of people recently through through Blas. I've met Clausa, I've met Rex, and I've met you, and it's really, I'm a hometown person anyways. Like I'm really like I represent the tribe.
Are you from Nashville?
I'm not from Nashville. I'm from Memphis. So.
Okay, well, you're from Tennessee.
I'm from Tennessee. Like I'm Tennessee to the bone.
You and Justin Timberlake.
Yeah. Well, he's not from Memphis. He's from Millington, where my grandfather.
He's from Tennessee, though. That's
but he likes to pretend he's from Memphis.
That's okay.
Yeah. It's not the same.
You always pick out the big. No, it's not the same.
It's not the same. Like I grew up like. Yeah, it was not fun. I don't live there. That's why I live here. But like I'm all about the TriStar. Like, I take a lot of pride, and it's something I probably picked up a lot more in the military. Because everyone, especially in the Marines at that time, was like from the Northeast or like the Midwest and stuff, and they're like New York, New Jersey, and like I could not care less about any of those places. And so for me, it's been fun to see the place that I love, like really love, like Nashville accepted me, and I built a home, I built a family. Here's the capital, and it's my state. To see that my state getting the recognition for like how unique and incredible this place is, because realistically, Nashville as a whole is a place that's built off of dreams and hopes.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's weird when you think about it. People are like, I've got an idea, and that idea is a song, and then that song. Tyler Childers has a much better way of saying this. One of his songs. It's like, I'm going to turn these songs into 2x4s.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
and it's like I'm turning something that you can't see into something physical.
I think
It makes it a special place, and it's why I'm here with this stuff. Like this is just a thing.
Yeah.
But like hopefully it becomes a thing.
And I'm going to give you credit for making a segue here, but with this project here, man, that's kind of what it was. It was an opportunity to put something down that means so much to me in a way that's not just sitting across a bar telling a story, but putting it in people's hands and having them live it to the best that I could do. And that's kind of what that book is about, I think.
Yeah. And I'm excited to talk about it. I'm excited to go through it. I mean, just your life now as we're getting into it, it's really interesting. I really vibe with the creative. I think we don't view it the way we should.
Yeah, you have to have it.
I think, dude, the best representation of the creative spirit and the soul lately has to be that movie Soul.
Oh yeah,
in Disney. Like I know it's like whimsical.
So that we can open a whole nother box about that. But
no, well, so like it's the thing that he chases. Like and like there's like little parts of it I like the most, but like the guy on the street corner flipping the sign when he's in a flow state. To anyone who hasn't been in a creative flow state, they're honestly missing out. Yeah. Like there's something about it when like you're in the rhythm of writing, creating music, or you're just in the zen of doing whatever it is that you're doing. It's so good.
I'm going to tell you this, as much as I don't like the internet, as far as like social media, one thing that it has done is it's given people instruction on how to find that creativeness inside of them.
Yes.
Whether it's cooking or making models or painting or drawing or singing or whatever it is, it's kind of broken down those barriers to say, hey, I could at least try this. I can give it a shot, and if it's bad, it's bad, but at least I'm going to feel good doing those things. And like decorating for Christmas or Halloween, trust me, there was like 5 or 7 years that we just went all out for Halloween, just like crazy stuff.
We do family costumes with one of my best friends.
We did, we had a Halloween party every year for like 11 years. There's like 70 people there. Yeah. And my wife would make all this our dining room was like a theme every year.
That's awesome.
I had a Dexter theme one time, and it was all plastic and a corpse in the middle and all this stuff. But just that creativeness there, it was just an outlet. It was so great, so good. And the internet does that for us too, I think.
Well, because it has nothing to do with anything else.
No,
that's what I love it. And if I have any addictions now, it's probably that.
Yeah,
I'm addicted to the creative.
I like delving deep into things that
I think you are too.
I like this book. I'm not an author. I never dreamed to be.
Yeah,
but I love it, man. I love sitting down and just writing these stories and writing this stuff out. It's great.
I mean, stories are just another way of talking about history.
I love history.
And I mean, that's the thing. What is that? That's a story. We used to carry it in our souls, person to person, then we put it on paper, and now it's on the internet and everything else. And information's a thing that like we forget. Even now, like. Just talking to my kids, like they can look up anything on their phone or on the computer, but like you used to have to go to this ancient place called a library,
encyclopedias,
and you'd have to sort through, the Dewey Decimal System and like all these things. And
well, you and I were talking about the 20s beforehand, and that book I read by Bill Bryson, the One Summer, 1927. One thing that I did when I worked midnights in Central, I was working 7 years on midnight shift, and in the wintertime, there's not a lot going on down there. It used to not be. But I would drive around and look at all those big iron plaques that told the history of all the buildings down there.
So incredible.
I would just pull up and get out and just read them and kind of look at the building. There's some great stuff down there that people don't even realize happened or was there in Nashville back in the the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, even before. It's right here, right in our backyard. We don't know anything about. You think Nashville's just country music and that's all it ever was, but I'm telling you, it is not. It is not. It's so much more.
It is not, and there's so much more to it, and we're going to get into it right after we come back. We're going to talk about your life as a police officer, and then we're going to take it on to the book and what you're doing now.
Cool.
And we'll be right back. Hope you guys are enjoying the episode. If you want to continue to hear more stories like this and to help us grow the podcast, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and to also drop a rating and review. Every bit helps. Thank you so much. Now, let's get back to the episode. And we're back. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Hyder?
Yeah, it's just Gerry.
Just Gerry?
Yeah.
That's what I'll use when I get pulled over.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I know
Jerry said I can speed here. Real quick question. We'll probably cut this out, but in case we don't, is it true that since I pay taxes, the weapon's mine too?
I guess if you want to try to take it, I mean, we can have that discussion. I think I pay taxes.
It's a joke.
I mean, I live here, I guess so. I pay my own salary.
Yeah,
I'm my own boss, I guess. Those are those quips, that people, like hands up, don't shoot. Remember that back in 1920. Listen to me. In 2020.
No, yeah, it was a hands up. Yeah. No, people say stuff like that.
It's just to try to get a rise.
Well, it's a popular meme if it's just like intrusive thoughts and it'll show like an officer's weapon.
Yeah.
And it's like, I pay taxes, this is mine.
Yeah.
But obviously it's not. It's just in jest.
And I think too,
because I've tried.
To that point, when stuff like that happens, and it does happen a lot.
People say stuff like that? Really?
Oh yeah.
Like commonly in like a circumstance where they're being arrested or something bad's happening.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about that.
Just normal.
I'm just talking about there is an ideology in a small percentage of people, remember that 20% we talked about, that try to rouse you to do something that's going to be fodder that they can put on YouTube or something, or just so they can defeat you. Like there was a guy that used to walk around downtown with a camera, and he may still do this, I don't know. And he came up to the police officers here, and he's like, "Hey, can you tell me what the Third Amendment is? Do you know what the Third Amendment is?" yeah, right. I mean, so the Third Amendment.
I'm not doing this.
Yeah. So the Third Amendment is like where it talks about like housing of soldiers and civilians.
Yes.
Civilian houses. Nothing's applicable to anything that we do.
Yeah,
right?
It refers to like wartime thoughts, basically.
Like revolutionary wartime. If you think about that. However, to a layperson that's sitting and perusing through YouTube, well, that police officer doesn't know the Constitution, doesn't know the amendments.
Lock him up.
Yeah. So and so people do that, and so you have to, especially with the younger officers that join the department these days, that I get a chance to talk to and mentor, and I tell them, I was like, don't fall into those traps. I mean, do your job. If people want to say funny things to try to get you off your game, just let it roll. We in our department, or not just our department, but our profession, we are the most trained in diversity out of any other profession in the world. We have more diversity training because they force it on us.
Metro Nashville?
No, police.
Oh, police.
The police in general. We are criticized more than any other profession. What other profession videotapes that person their entire shift? You have elected officials that don't wear that don't wear a body camera, that are making laws. Yeah. And all we are doing is just
they wouldn't be able to do that because then they would have to turn off their E-Trade accounts.
I guess. Yeah. Or we would all know about their E-Trade accounts. But I say all that, and not in a bitter sense, but just the fact that I'm proud of what I do. I'm proud that I can do that and sustain that and make it through that and still be effective as a member of society and a member of this city. I mean, that's to me, it's an accomplishment. Well,
so what you're touching on is something, and I couldn't agree more with everything you're saying, is that like if everyone had to videotape their job, and then on top of it, so like your point of view, and then on top of it, people are outwardly viewing you through their perspective, they probably wouldn't feel the same way about it.
Probably not.
And then they like, hey, so Jerry, what about this? You're like, did you really need to move your mouse every 20 minutes to keep your screen from going to sleep?
I mean,
you weren't really working there, were you, Jer?
You can. We can scrutinize all the things that have been put in place in the name of transparency and accountability. I mean, those are the key words. And listen, I think we do need to be accountable for our actions.
Yeah.
Not just police, but everybody. But as police, we do need to be accountable for actions. And what people don't understand is no one hates a bad cop worse than a good cop.
Yeah.
It's
all people know. So I mean, I couldn't agree more for this. One of my favorite people of all time is Donut Operator. I mean, no, I love Cody. He's very dear to me, actually.
Yeah. And he's to the point. You know what I'm saying? Like he understands that. Like I don't want anytime that some officer in Wyoming does something ridiculous that makes it on YouTube or makes it on the news, it can affect me.
Yes.
Let me look at what happened. We talk about George Floyd because that's recent, but let's go back. Let's go back to 2014 when Michael Brown and all that stuff happened up in Ferguson. That was kind of the catalyst to all the things that started changing police work in the modern era, I think.
I think that's an accurate assessment because so I knew a bunch of guys at the time, and I even got an offer to go do some security contracting up there, just for the news reporters.
Yeah.
I mean, a buddy of mine's on TV, like literally slapping a brick out of the air on CNN, just being like, because that you're right, it is the first time where everyone just kind of.
But I will say this, and to be fair, I don't want to get involved too far down into that, but the things that happened on that day in 2014 were just the tip of the iceberg of things that had happened months and years before that within that city that accumulated to that one point. And I think that goes back to what I talked about earlier with treating everybody with dignity and respect and not trying to put a blanket over the problem, but pinpointing the people that are actual problem and understanding that's a small percentage of the population that's causing the larger percentage of the problems.
In every sector, area of life.
Everywhere.
Like it's just everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people forget that. But, it's stuff that you thought about very early on in your career, right? As you were, you were on the Winky Couch.
The Winky Couch.
Was that what it was? Winky Dink. And then
Winky Dink and You was the name of that show. And honestly, then at that point in time, I never thought about being a cop. Never grew up wanting to be a cop.
Yeah.
Never. My dad was a fireman. I didn't want to do that. I didn't
That's
want to run
the best gig.
Didn't want to run it. The fire department?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You ask any cop, they'll tell you that's the best gig.
Yeah.
I should have been a fireman. That's the mantra of any good seasoned veteran police officer.
Yeah.
Should have been a fireman. I used to tell my dad later on when I joined the police department, he's passed now, he died 15 years ago, but I would tell him there's only two professions in this world that have a bed waiting for you, a prostitute and a fireman. So I said, I guess you chose one of them. So
yeah, well,
but yeah, man, I mean, I never wanted to be a fireman. I never wanted to be a cop. I thought I would be an artist or an actor. And I joke sometimes saying that I kind of am an actor because sometimes I have to pretend like I care. But I do care. But it's just frustrating a lot of times, like going to gimbals and the rotating door. It just seems like sometimes that's what it feels like. You go to work, you come back, and you go back, and it's the same the next
just
day.
Over and over
and
again.
that's where we go back to like the people you work with and building that camaraderie with the people and, man, just sustaining your everyday by building those relationships with those guys and girls and just doing your job, man. I've been very fortunate to make it where I'm at in this department. Yeah,
so like you were saying, you went and shot your pilot, did a few episodes, and you didn't show up for your.
I skipped it the first time, and I didn't think they would hire me back. Really,
was it interview? Or?
It was the oral interview, and I thought I just didn't show up. I was 25, 26. I'm like, oh, man, I'm not gonna do that.
I don't care.
But then in 99, I was like, that's what I want to do. I gotta do it. It kept bugging me. I've got to get back to it.
Bro, Nashville was taking off then.
Yeah, it still was in its.
The football team had just come to town.
Just went to the Super Bowl. So World
Series.
Yeah. So I went back, applied again, thinking that it probably. And the difference. Here's the crazy thing: 475 applicants that year when I took the civil service test.
That's it.
That's it. I mean, that's a lot. Now
is that a lot?
Yeah, we're looking now at like if we're lucky if we get 60 or 70 a year, or a civil service test. I mean, it's the desire to do this job has diminished a lot, I think, and that's
which will only create.
And that's not here. That's not just here. That's
nationwide.
That's nationwide.
Probably globally.
It's nationwide, and I think, and that's okay. We're still getting qualified people. We're still getting people that are going through it and getting out here and doing this job. But yeah, so I went back in '99, applied, and went through it, and so got accepted. And when I started the academy, I remember telling myself, they're going to have to drag me out of here. I'm not leaving. This is what I want to do. I'm going to, and anybody that, I think I was in session 38. I think we graduated 33 officers that class.
How many started?
72, something around there.
Is that normal?
That's about the right retention rate, I guess.
About half?
Yeah, a little over half. So.
Yeah.
But I mean, you'd ask anybody that, I think there's only like 11 of us left now. That's 23 years ago. But they'll all tell you that I was just gung-ho, dude. I was and I wasn't. I hated running, still do. I'm not a runner. Physical fitness. I mean, I could do it, but it wasn't my forte. I'd never shot a gun before in my life. Didn't know anything about shooting a gun. So I really came in just green as could be, and just latched onto it and never looked back, man.
I think that's really good, though.
Oh, it is. I think it is.
Just a clean slate.
And I love it. I mean, I wouldn't do anything else. Even through all the crap that we went through in 2020 with all the protests and George Floyd, and I never wanted to leave.
Yeah.
Never crossed my mind to say, I'm quitting this. This is my identity.
Yeah.
It's not my life, because there's more to my life than this, but man, it's my purpose. It's what I was meant to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've seen such a swing in the way law enforcement in particular is
well, I think society
scrutinized.
Yeah.
Because so you come in 99.
Yeah.
You're on the street when 2000.
I actually started the academy in 2000.
Okay.
Got on the street in 2001, right January 2001.
And then jump cut September 11th happens.
Yeah.
And then so first responders went from being unrecognized.
Any cop or fireman will tell you September 12th, 2001 was the best day of their life.
Yeah.
Because the way, and it's not about the recognition that we received. It's about the way that the country congealed together on that day and the days after, and how we all just put down our differences and just came together and pitched in, like we were talking about earlier, when that catastrophe happens, and normal people step up and they're not in that shock or panic mode. They go right in, they rush right in
Toward chaos.
Yeah. And that's something that we're trained to do. You're trained to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not uncommon, but normal people are not. And
Most people are not. It's just, and that's okay.
Yeah, no, it shouldn't be that way.
It shouldn't be. I don't think everyone should live like that at all.
It is.
Because you end up chasing. You end up chasing it. That's
that roller coaster.
Yeah.
And part of that mental issues that we have in our job is going home and leaving it and not chasing it at home. And that's kind of the issues we get into, I guess, off duty. And then we start with our addictions. And when you don't have a healthy addiction, creativeness, we talked about
creative addictions,
music. I mean, I play guitar now. I love to sing and not, I'm not going to bars and singing, but
this is the place to do it.
I know, but I love to, write music with my buddies and play and sing. And of course now, in the last couple of years,
a little bit of writing as well.
Which is
as found in the Smoking Gun in Music City, which is available on Amazon.
It is on Amazon, yeah. It's doing pretty well, I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
and we're gonna put a link for it in the description
I
as
got
well.
a QR code for it.
All of it. We're gonna tag it up big time. But
yeah,
I want to. So, I want you to try to walk me through this, and I don't want to truncate your career. And thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, man.
But so you're on the street January 2001.
Yeah.
What was your first job? Like, what was your first unit? I don't know cop. I'm learning cop talk.
So
I don't.
Out of the academy, you ride with a field training officer for anywhere between. It used to be 6 months, 2 months rotations, 3 different precincts. Now I think it's like 4 months, something like that. Nonetheless, you're riding with someone, getting acclimated to it. And I can tell you vividly, there's certain memories that I have of my career. One of them is sitting in the front seat of a police car.
Driving.
I wasn't driving because you don't get to drive when you're first out.
You don't get to drive.
No, depending on your FTO, they're like, you sit there and shut up and.
They don't want you to drive.
My first FTO.
Buford Pusser.
No, his name was John Murphy, and John was great. He'd been on probably 1,000 years at that point in time. I mean, we went to Waffle House right after roll call.
Yeah.
We sat in Waffle House for a couple hours. I learned every item menu on the Waffle House menu. I could tell you what it was. I was eagerly listening to the radio. I was like, hey, do we need to go today? He's like, did we get dispatched to that? I'm like, no, we're not going to that. That kind of thing.
No.
Just old school policing,
I kind of like him.
Yeah. And we turned our blue lights on once in 2 months.
Now I really like him.
So he was just an old school guy.
Yeah.
Taught me more about what I didn't want to do in policing,
Yeah.
But that's how it happens, because you're eager, you're full of what we call piss and vinegar. You're ready to go. You're ready to, jump fences and all this stuff you see on TV. And he's just not about that because he's been on for 1,000 years and he's like, But anyway, I say all that just to say I remember sitting in the passenger seat of that car, looking down and seeing a patch on my shoulder, or seeing this badge on my chest, and thinking, "Man, I'm freaking police, dude. Like, I'm the police." And
This is cool.
It's a surreal feeling when you hear a call on the radio like, "Hey, we got somebody that's got a gun and they're walking around the crowd." I'm like, "That sounds dangerous, man. I need to call the police. Wait a minute, I am the police. I got to go to that." So I did that. Went through my rotations.
What about your second FTO?
Second FTO was bad. It was midnight shift. He was a runner gunner kind of guy, so we got into a lot of stuff. I was involved with I didn't shoot, but the officer involved shooting at that point in time. And
That was your first incident?
it wasn't my first incident. It was one, but there was a lot on midnight shift. It's a different animal, which, man, I love midnight shift. I really do. And kind of the catalyst for some of this book is midnight shift. But
yeah, that's where things happen.
it is.
Yeah.
And it was this idea that the whole city's asleep and I'm awake protecting it. I mean, I know that sounds kind of corny, but that's kind of how I felt. I felt like they've put me in charge of their safety because they're now. It's like when you're on watch, with your platoon, and you're the guy that has to make sure nothing happens.
Yeah,
it sucks, and you want to sleep, but you're like, there's some kind of honor in that where you feel like that you're the one that's taking care of all these people that are just helpless, because we're helpless when we sleep. I mean, let's just face it, we're helpless.
I mean, right when I would do it, I would feel like Batman. I would be like, I am vengeance.
Yeah. And beyond that, there's no traffic, and you can get around easily. Anyway, long and short of it is, I did 4 years in patrol after that, and then they offered a position. They opened a position in the intel unit, which they were turning into a gang unit.
Okay.
We're gonna start a gang unit because the gang epidemic in 2005, 2004 in Nashville was kind of on the rise.
Yeah.
So 79 people put in for that interview. They interviewed for that position. They took 5 people, and I was one of the people that they took over there for that position. I was in gangs for 8 years as a detective. There's nothing that I didn't get involved with in gangs. I got into 2 critical incidents, shooting incidents. The second one almost killed me. Second one was a partner and I were ambushed in a car in a parking lot. It was raining. It was night. We were watching one of the gang members in a parking lot of a school, and he actually slipped out the back door of the house, came around behind us, and shot 11 rounds into our car.
Whoa!
And the second round, I heard the first one hit, felt it more than anything else. Hit the side of the car. It was like a sledgehammer hitting the car. And the second one came through the back window. I was in the passenger seat and clicked. I say clicked, and you probably know what I mean if you've been around weapons and know. But the second one clicked across my face. I mean, if I'd have been an inch or and a half forward, it would have hit me right in the temple. Did you hear it whiz? Oh, I heard it click. I mean, like you could hear it like it's like a like right across, and through the back window to the one. So inevitably, my partner at the time, Paul Smith, he's still in the department now. He's sergeant. He's a good dude. Put it in gear, drove over some bushes. I don't know how he missed the trees and the sign, but got us out of the parking lot, and miraculously, neither one of us was hit. But
wow,
so that was 2000 and that was 2011, 2010.
You're in a school parking lot and this happens? What school parking lot was it? Can you say?
Jones Padilla over there at 9th and Buchanan. Yeah.
And he was just hanging out, meeting some friends?
We were watching a house. We think he came out of the back of the house and then came around.
What was he doing in there?
Who knows? I don't know. That's where he lived. I guess. We were just kind of trying to get intel. He honestly, man, he could have murdered both of us had he not been such a coward. I mean, because he stopped 50, 60 yards short of the car behind a tree and shot at us from that distance. Thankfully, A year before that, I was involved in a critical instance where I ended up had to shoot a gang member over at 28th and Clifton. And it was one of those where Sarge calls like, "Hey, we're hearing that this guy's going to shoot this other gang member. You need to go out there and try to thwart it or whatever, As soon as I turn on Clifton Avenue, he comes out of the laundromat, starts shooting at another gang member kind of across the street. So I jump out of the car. In the middle of the street, he starts shooting at me, and I end up returning fire, and I hit him 3 times. Didn't kill him, but he was shooting over his shoulder at me, and I hit him and shattered both his femur bones and hit him in the pelvic bone, and he dropped. And of course, I remember it's very surreal, but I remember it's noon, in the middle of the day, and it got so quiet, I could, and I run over to him. And here's the thing with being a gang investigator. You get to know these kids, you get to know these guys, and this may be kind of a weird thing, but there's not a lot of difference between a gang member and a police officer, except for our end game. These are boys that there's a definition of a gang from a book by Frederick Thrasher from 1913 or 1919. It's called The Study of 1900 Gangs, I think, in Chicago. I can't remember the exact title of the book, but it was written like in the early 1900s about Chicago gangs.
Okay.
And his definition of a gang is a group that is spontaneously combined and then are an interstitial group that is spontaneously put together but integrated through conflict. So you think about that. You got these boys that live in the same neighborhood for whatever reason, and then through conflict they bonded together. Same thing military, same thing police. You know, I don't know anybody that was in my academy class, but now we work the streets together. We're integrated through conflict.
Literally never thought about it like
and
this.
So it's and so you get to know these kids, and when they're not in trouble, you kind of learn their family, you learn their names, you learn who they are, and you realize they're misguided and they're going down the wrong path, and for whatever reason, but they're still people. They still have a soul like me. They still have a family. And if you talk to older gang members, they beg and plead for their younger brothers and sisters not to be involved with that.
Yeah,
it's just a cycle that continues. You know,
it's a cycle of poverty.
Yeah. It is a study of 1,313 gangs in Chicago by Frederick Thrasher.
Cycle of poverty and opportunity.
Yeah. So anyway, getting back to all that, so I knew the kid that I shot that was shooting at me, and
he lived.
He did live.
Good.
I went over to him, and he's like, they called me Pac-Man. That was my nickname in the gangs because the movie Colors back in 1988. I don't know if you ever saw that movie with Sean Penn and Robert Duvall. It's a great movie.
I had to check it out.
Yeah,
they
it's called Colors.
Pac-
They because Sean Penn, they said I kind of looked like Sean Penn back in early days, and his name was Pac-Man in that movie. So they called me Pac-Man. The gang members did.
Nice.
So he's like, Pac-Man, I'm gonna die. I'm like, man, you know, your legs are pretty messed up, but you're probably not gonna die. You're gonna be fine. So tended to him first aid. You know, that's just kind of how it is. I mean, it's so common now, but that's how we train our officers. You know, if you get in a critical incident, and I've been to shooting review boards for our officers now, and one thing that's so amazing, especially with our body cameras, you'll see the incident unfold, you'll see the officer use lethal force, you'll see the suspect drop, and the next thing you see is every officer going and tending to that suspect and patching them up and trying their best to save that person's life, which is, to me, is just so much more than dealing with the threat, is trying to save the threat after you dealt with it, it's just amazing ideology.
There aren't any jobs where you do that.
No, there's really not. There's really not. But I did gangs for 8 years. Got promoted to sergeant, went back to patrol. Then I supervised a narcotic unit for a year or two.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wanted to work midnight shift down at Central Precinct down on Broadway.
Why?
Yeah, I don't know, but it was fantastic. I was there for 6 years and was actually where this story came from. And this is going to sound really bad, and I don't mean it to sound the way it's going to sound, but sitting around down there, obviously we have Nashville, just like every other major city, has an epidemic of homelessness. I mean, it's the poverty and the mental health issues alone.
Yeah.
And it's hard to face that every day as an officer, because there's a lot of things we have in place in this city to facilitate that, to help those individuals
with their mental health issues.
Their mental health issues and their homeless issues. A lot of them choose not to. You know, you can't force things upon them like that.
I have a little bit of experience with that. I used to be the security director at Southern Hills.
Okay.
So we used to send them up and down to the mental health co-op and everything.
Yeah. So it's just like, again,
they would come in and be like, have you ordered lunches yet? If so, if not,
stick around.
If not, can you tell them to put in a double?
Yeah.
Like they would literally come in and I'd just be like, yep.
But it goes back to being human.
Yeah.
You know, and but anyway, I say all that just to say that I tried my best to look at homeless individuals not as items. I was fortunate enough to be one of the instructors for a program we had here in our department called Fair and Impartial Policing. It's a program we put every officer through about our implicit biases and about the way we look at people and treat people. And one of the things that really stuck out to me in that training was the fact that the majority of people see a homeless individual not as a person but as a item.
Why is that?
I think it's a disassociation. I think it's, if you are a successful person and you see someone that you feel like is milking the system, or you feel like is just happy enough being there on the side of the street drinking their booze or whatever, begging for money, you have this implicit anger that comes up on you that says, I've worked for what I have, you're lazy, you just want handouts, those kind of things. And you have to work hard not to let that happen. And I think one thing that really woke me up to that. So you saw it when I came in, I have a Jeep Wrangler. I love it. I mean, it's fantastic.
I used to have one. I sold it.
Yeah, I love it. I'll never buy anything under a Jeep before. I love it. But in the summertime, you know how it goes.
It's perfect.
Doors off, windows off. Even now, it's raining outside. I don't have any windows on it. I had those canvas doors on it, but that's just how I drive it. I have a hard top for it, but it sits in my garage. I never put it on it.
Yeah.
So when my kid was young, and I was wrong in what I did, but when we were driving around in that Jeep, it's wide open, I would make comments to myself about someone begging for money just on a whim, not to him, but just like, oh my God, man, I can't, why these, just audibly thinking aloud with him in the car. And if you don't have a kid, you don't realize they suck up everything you say. It's like a sponge when they're really young.
Yes.
So when he got older, probably 8 or 9, and we're in my Jeep, and we pull up to the intersection, and there's no doors or windows, and he goes, "That person just needs to get a job." And but you're like, "Oh my God," you realize,
oh no,
they're a reflection of what you've kind of taught them.
Yeah.
And that was a moment where I'm like, I can't do this. You have to have that compassion and just not even compassion, just the understanding that you don't know their story. You don't know their backstory, So I started kind of changing my ideology about that and really looking at the homeless people that were walking around, working midnights on Central. They were walking around downtown. And I started thinking of them more as victims, not as suspects, but as victims, and how they could be mistreated by the public and how they could be the victim of a heinous crime. And so in this book, the story in the book is that there is a person that is killing homeless people in Nashville, but disguising it as fentanyl overdoses. I mean, we can go on and on about the fentanyl epidemic that's happening in our country.
I do want to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I mean...
And I like the story also.
Well, briefly, let's talk about this fentanyl epidemic. I think we are
Explain to me. I'm pretend like I'm dumb.
So, okay, well...
All right, don't pretend. I am dumb.
No, I don't think you're dumb at all. I think...
Again, I've seen small parts of it because just when I was at Southern Hills, like March, some bad dope would roll through Chattanooga, and then we had 48 hours before it hit us, like literally every time. And then they would just dump bodies in the parking lot.
Oh yeah, or just pull up and push them out of the car.
I pulled a guy who out of a car, like he was rigor mortis, like he couldn't, his legs couldn't bend. We put him in a wheelchair.
We used to call that a ghetto taxi.
Really?
Because it just like a gunshot, used with a gunshot, like our gang members. It would pull up in the drive-through. They'd push the guy out.
They do that too.
Gunshots, and they take off.
No, I mean, like, dude parked his car in the parking lot, left the car. We pulled him out of the passenger seat.
Yeah.
And it was gnarly.
Well, so I go back to when I was in gangs. We had an uptick of homemade manufactured ecstasy. That was a big thing that was going on in the South.
Isn't all of it homemade though?
It is, but when I say homemade, I'm talking about they would add like kerosene and
kerosene to ecstasy.
Yeah, like all these products,
cutting agents
to make it whatever it was.
To cut it down to increase your.
And I thought it was, we would do search warrants on these houses. You find all this stuff. You're like, I can't believe people ingest this. It's that reaching for that next level. Everybody tells you all the time, and I've never been a drug addict, okay? I drink alcohol, may have long time ago smoked a weed, long time ago, child.
Like 25 years ago.
More than that, probably like 40 years ago or something, it was horrible. But you're trying to achieve that rush.
Yeah, it's addiction.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Addiction.
That's what addiction is. Reward for activity, and you take it away, you don't have the reward. But this fentanyl overdose, so fentanyl is one of those. It's and people don't realize this. Fentanyl is a legitimate drug. I mean, it's a legitimate
used in medicine.
It's a medicine that's used for legitimate purposes, just like cocaine was at one time, you know, or just like any kind of opioids or all those things, except for the synthetic stuff. But it's just become such a cutting agent and such an addition to everything now. And it started more so with heroin, and then just it's kind of moved into just whatever we can get.
It's everything.
Everything.
That's why not all. There's a rash of actors like that honestly have access to good drugs,
Right.
And they're still dying from it.
Yeah.
Like what's his name? I don't want to. I don't.
I got what you're saying.
Yeah, like you see people that like shouldn't die, but that like all of a sudden they do. Like it's.
Yeah. Well, just because you have money don't mean that you're smart, and just because you have money don't mean you're buying the best stuff.
Well, yeah, and then I heard something on I can't remember where I heard it or saw it, but that they're in L.A. or something. It was probably Joe Rogan, in like L.A. or something, that there's these animals that are wild because animals are wilder than ever because there's so much fentanyl and drugs, and they're somehow getting exposed to like water or something.
Maybe.
Like, or they're being tested. I don't know, because like now people are having like drug testers or stuff at like these big parties.
There's a lot of cities now that are handing out Narcan, or in you know, for overdoses. They're giving training on Narcan, and then they're also providing
on billboards,
sterile needles and test kits for, you know, fentanyl and that kind of stuff. Which, you know, I guess mixed emotions about that, but I guess the idea is that we're trying to save lives how we can, but maybe there's a better way. I don't know, but the fentanyl overdose.
Is there a way to stop it? I'm so sorry.
I don't know.
Like, it doesn't seem like it'll ever go away.
It's like the war on drugs. I mean,
Is there a way to win the war on drugs?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
It's like the war on theft. I mean, can you win a war on theft? I mean, people are going to steal things, or.
I mean, there's the argument for legalization of everything. I don't know if that's the solution either.
No, I don't think a country can sustain on the legalization of everything. You know, there has to be rules. There has to be structure.
I think so.
When you don't have rules, you don't have structure. You have anarchy, and when you have anarchy, your society collapses.
Yeah.
Just ask Rome.
Yeah.
What happened with Rome? You know.
That is what happened with Rome.
Yeah.
That and lead pipes.
Yeah. Well, so it's funny you say that, and I don't want to get off on this tangent, but
I think about Rome at least once a day. Go ahead.
Everybody does. But
not everybody.
The water ducts and the sewage systems in Rome.
Mm-hmm.
If you know anything about Roman history, like when those were developed, and those were the ones, it was new and modern, and taking sewage from the city, out of the city, into the waters, and fresh water back in the city.
Yeah,
I liken that to social media. Social media is our sewer ducts, and it will be the downfall of America because they both deliver shit back and forth. That's my.
Well, made Blotz's job easier. That's an easy clip. That's an easy clip. That was perfect. Everything you just said.
Oh well, that's been the way I feel.
No, and I want to talk about that because I want to finish this segment, and then the whole last part. I just want to talk about the book.
Going on tangent.
No. This is what we're supposed to be happening. And thank you again for being here. But the fentanyl thing, I'm fascinated with. Because it does seem it's a never-ending problem. Obviously, the war on drugs is a never-ending problem, but like there is radically no solution to it. Like with opioids, Narcan, right? And I've seen people be brought back from Narcan.
Oh,
and
I've seen it firsthand.
As you have had as well. I'm pretty sure all the adults in this room have seen that. But it's crazy to see someone not alive and then be alive instantly, as if Jesus spoke into Lazarus.
And what people don't realize about that too is it's not like they're alive and then they're fine. They got to get to the hospital quick after that, because then they'll crash again. But it gives that window of, and I've seen them, like they open their eyes and they're just, it's like, I don't know. When I was a kid, like 6th grade, we used to have this game where you'd hyperventilate and you pass out.
Yeah, it's illegal now, I'm sure.
It's illegal, I'm sure. But we did that in school. And I remember being on the ground after that and waking up, and you feel like you've been in a dream. You've been asleep for 10 years, and everybody's looking at you. Same sort of thing. But
it feels like a poisoning of the soul. This stuff, you talk about like the sewage thing. Like you were saying, I don't know what the solution is. I haven't thought about it.
Well, remember we talked earlier about the insurance policy.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not gonna stop an active shooter from happening per se, because mentally ill people are going to exist.
Mentally ill people do mentally ill
mentally
things.
ill people are going to do mentally ill things.
Yeah.
But you got to make sure that we're there to meet it and minimize it as much as we can. And I think as a country, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to minimize it as much as we can.
Because that's what police are supposed to do. What I think people maybe believe police should do, what they're referring to is actually kind of a police state. If you're preventing freedom of will and freedom of movement, like where you're preventing stuff as opposed to responding to horrible incidents, that's the difference. Like good law enforcement is responding. They're trained to worst case scenarios.
You hope that your presence enough can deter it.
You can deter it, but
But you're not going to deter someone who's determined.
That's 100%. And it bothers me. People are like, oh, why aren't they doing? I'm like, what do you want them to do? Do you want guards everywhere? Because then that's a restriction.
But I think a lot of those comments come from
uneducated people.
Well, I don't like the word ignorant, because it sounds like I'm being horrible to someone. But I don't expect people to know the law that I know, or the policies, or the way the law works. Normal citizens, I don't expect them. That's why when someone calls and they say, listen, my iPods were stolen and they're pinging in this house, I need you to go in there and get them.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Because the law prevents me from just walking into someone's house.
As it should.
Right.
Yes.
And the same people that want me to go into that house and do that are the same ones that would complain about me going into their house for another reason. So there's an ignorance to what we can and can't do, and we have to be diplomatic in the way that we try to explain that to someone, to say, I know you're a victim of crime, but there are certain steps we have to go through in order to facilitate the resolution of that. And a lot of times that takes a long time. And by the time it's run its course, your AirPods are gone.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how it is. And it doesn't seem fair. And when people face that moment and they realize that the law is not fair a lot of times, that's a realization I think kind of wakes them up to what's really going on around us.
Do you think that most people are either intentionally ignorant or unintentionally ignorant of the realities of the place they live?
I don't think most people are ignorant. I think they're...
Not ignorant. That's not the right word.
Well, but I know what you're saying. I think...
Unaware?
Listen, I know nothing about banking, okay? Nothing about banking at all. I couldn't dream of going into a bank and telling a CEO how to run his bank. I don't know how to do that.
Somebody should.
Somebody should.
They're not doing well.
But I don't know
now.
anything about that.
Yeah.
So when people come, and especially professional athletes come in and want to tell me how we should do our job.
Is that a thing that happens a lot?
Sometimes it happens.
A professional athlete tells you how to do stuff?
Well, like on Twitter or whatever. They have opinions about how we did or didn't do what we did or didn't do.
Well, tell them, maybe they went a little harder in the paint. The Lakers would have won the series.
Up a little more. Yeah, whatever. But I say all that just to say that I think there's a terminology called contact theory that kind of goes back to the homelessness too. When you don't understand someone, spend some time around them, get to know them. Like I don't know much about being a Muslim. I don't know anything about that other than what I've told or what I've read. Or I don't think Muslim people are bad people. Mm-hmm. I don't know many of them, but I do know some. And when I spend time with them and get to know them, we don't have a lot of things that are very different. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
You want to know what I do as a police officer? Come do a ride along. Come sit in the car for 10 hours and ride along and see how we interact with the public. We offer that. You could do that.
I will sign up tomorrow.
You could do that. You can come and ride along and get an idea of how we enforce the law, if you will. And I think the majority of people will be surprised at the tolerance. They will be surprised at the kindness that officers have. They'll be surprised at the overall investment that the officers, and I can speak for this department, the investment that these officers have for this city.
Yeah, people genuinely love it. People genuinely love it. Like the dedication of all the officers I've met from all the precincts, like the connection, the network, I don't know, just the vibe is immaculate. Like they really do love being a Metro Nashville police officer.
I'm going to say this, and people think I'm not telling the truth, but it's the best job in the world. I mean, that's the way I feel.
I'm so close. If Blas comes in here with an application, like I don't know, I might ask to skip a few steps. Yeah, and be like, just give me a car.
Just put me in there.
Yeah, put me in there,
coach. Yeah. It's really the best job in the world.
No, well, I've always found the best version of myself in the service of others, and that's ultimately what it is.
That's pretty profound.
I am.
That says a lot.
It keeps me accountable.
Yeah.
It helps me to learn more about people. You know, like the job at Southern Hills in particular. Like I've never had a disdain towards people with addiction or mental health issues, but it'll if you understand, it's like fire. Trauma's a fire, right? If you understand it, you can understand how to be warm and how to cool off. But if you don't, it'll make you sweat.
Sure.
And it really shapes everything. It just makes every moment better and more. So like when you're there helping people and trying to like work on that collective good, like
well, I think
it helps.
Public service is a calling, just like being a pastor or being a counselor. I mean, you kind of get called into that. And listen, there are people doing this job that are not called to do this job.
Yeah.
They don't last very long. Some of them do, some don't. But there's people that you generally know that this is what they're made to do.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of how it is with me. I've never looked back and still kicking along and enjoying what I'm doing.
And we're going to talk more about that and the smoking gun in Music City when we come back, which the link will be in all the descriptions in the bio. We'll be right back. Hope you guys are enjoying the episode. If you want to continue to hear more stories like this and to help us grow the podcast, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and to also drop a rating and review. Every bit helps. Thank you so much. Now, let's get back to the episode. And we're back. Jerry, I almost called you Lieutenant.
That's fine.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to be respectful of the things.
I just have Hernandez do that. Like, we're not on duty. I don't want him to call me Lieutenant. Just call me Jerry.
Well, I mean, that's.
I know it's a respectful thing. Like, one of my best friend in the department is named Tommy Widener, and he's deputy chief now. And great dude.
Yeah.
But I call him Chief, and he's like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Just call me Tommy. And that's how he's at everybody. It's not just me. But that's just, you got to respect the rank, though.
You got to.
But
it's a structure in place. And that's, I really appreciate you being here. I want to talk about something we talked about offline as we're continuing and getting into the smoking gun in Music City. You had said you don't have a social media presence, but I wanted to hear more about, because you said some of the stuff you were doing, if you can talk about how you were solving crimes on the internet.
Yeah, so back in 2005, when I took the position in the gang unit here in Nashville, we didn't have a manual about how to have a gang unit. The only thing we had to really reference was the crash unit in Los Angeles, which really crashed and burned. Turned out to be a corrupt unit back in the 80s.
What is the crash? Is that the people in like the Rampart district or
yeah? Well,
Rampart?
it was actually the gang unit, the early gang unit,
okay.
the LAPD.
That got in trouble for all the stuff they did in Skid Row. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Stop me if I'm
no. Yeah,
wrong.
You're right. So there was 5 detectives and a sergeant here, and the social media giant at the time was MySpace.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if people even remember what that is.
Oh, I had a MySpace.
Yeah, Tom
it
Anderson.
was incredible.
Yeah. So the great thing about MySpace, as opposed to like a Facebook account or an Instagram account now, is if you remember, it was very customizable.
Yeah.
So on that homepage, you could use whatever colors you wanted.
Yes.
You could cascade words or symbols. You could put pictures. You could even have music that comes up when your page starts. I mean, it was very...
It's genius in the aspect that they gave us a platform and then they made us build it.
Made you build it, but you could customize it.
Yeah.
So that was great for us in the police world, and especially in the world of organized gangs, because I could go to a search engine on MySpace, and I could type in John Overton High School, Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
And it would show me all the students that had a MySpace page that say they went to that high school. Mm-hmm. Then I could look at each page and figure out what gang affiliation each of them had. So,
what were some of the telltale signs?
Oh, like colors, obviously, or even just saying, 5 Deuce Hoover Crip, or, Skyline, East Side Skyline Bloods, or whatever it was, whatever their affiliation was.
Wow.
They just put it right out there.
Literally?
Because it wasn't illegal necessarily to be in a gang.
They would really do that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So you would have these images and these pictures of these gang members.
Whatever happened to tradecraft?
Yeah. But again, and let me just say this. The gangs that were formulating in Nashville at the time were, in essence, hybrid gangs, as opposed to your traditional folk and people nation gangs in L.A. and in Chicago, your Gangster Disciples, and in Miami or in New York. There was a evolution of rules or lack of rules that kind of came in with the gangs forming here. We had a lot of Hispanic gangs.
Okay.
The Curtis Pride gang was formed here.
Yes.
And the reason for that, and this is, dude, just tell me to shut up if I'm talking too much. But
no, I'm in. I'm locked in.
The Curtis Pride gang, obviously Nashville
has a huge Kurdish population.
Sure, Nashville has the largest Iraqi and Kurdish population in the world, other than Kurdistan.
Yeah.
Los Angeles has the largest Iranian at the time. I'll say at the time. I don't know how it is now, but at the time,
I'm pretty sure it's fairly.
But if you go back to the late '70s and early '80s in San Francisco, there was a large influx of Asian families that came into San Francisco at the time, and these young men came over from Asia. And they were steeped in the traditions of Buddhism and the religion there, but also tempted with the freedoms of America at the time. Mm-hmm. So it was this kind of a morphing that happened at the time with those gangs out there. Same thing happened here. You have Kurdish kids that came over with their parents as refugees that were steeped in the traditions of Muslim doctrine and religion, but then the freedoms of America. And they kind of morphed into this. And
why Nashville?
Well, I think Nashville was the climate. I talked to some people. The climate was the same, really similar to Turkey in Nashville. The terrain, the hills, the mountains, the agricultural. A lot of Kurdistan. I have some friends that are Kurdish, wonderful people. Man, I'm telling you what, some of the best food I've ever had. Some Kurdish folks that I have, they would make these deer soups and this rice and like all this stuff. It was just fantastic.
That sounds great.
But they would talk about how most of the men and women there, great gardeners, and they would grow these fruits and vegetables and stuff. But anyway, you think about it around that time, right after 9/11, and you get into 2004, 2005, 2006, there was America just felt like that. Any Iraqi-looking person was a terrorist. So you have these young boys and girls that are going to schools here that are just getting shunned and getting made fun of or picked on or whatever. So they kind of bonded together.
Yeah, most Americans don't know the difference between one person from an Arabic country to another.
Absolutely not. So they had to form this alliance with each other for protection. Same thing that the Hispanic kids had to do. The Brown Pride was formed here because you had all these young Hispanic kids that were going some of them didn't speak the language, some of them didn't get along with other people, so they again formed these groups for protection. And you form them for protection initially, and then all of a sudden it takes a more aggressive approach, and then it just kind of formulates into an organized gang. That's kind of what happened. So anyway, we had two of the leaders of the Curtis Pride gang that shot and killed shot a park police officer and got charged with that, and it kind of escalated that gang into the spotlight. And then we started utilizing social media to create these dossiers of individuals.
They just post everything, huh?
They do. Well,
God, criminals
they're proud of what they do. They want everybody to know. There's no shame in it,
Do you think that comes from maybe generationally, or like you talked about a little bit about how there's less structure? You said hybrid gangs. You think that like not having the structure of like these gangs have been around where they're like, don't post this on the internet.
Okay.
Or maybe
but here's the thing.
I'm genuinely curious because
here's the thing.
If I was in a gang, that's the last thing I'm doing.
But the internet was new. I mean, this was new, and if you go back to like your traditional, 1970s and 80s Bloods and Crips in LA. You didn't have social media. You didn't. But what did you do? You wore your flag. You wore your colors. You had everything showing outwardly to represent who you were. It's all about representation. And you did that openly because you weren't afraid of that. So it just transcribed over into a digital platform where you represented yourself. Hey, I'm not afraid of who I am. This is what I am, right? Mm-hmm. And so we developed a kind of a way to collect this data information. Again, there's no court cases on it. There was no legal restrictions on if it's open to the public. I mean, and MySpace was not a private sort of platform. So I would spend a lot of days just developing and putting together all these folders of different high schools. I started with the high schools, and then anytime I would arrest somebody or we would go on a call or a homicide, and we went out on everything back then because we wanted to be involved with everything. It had to be. Mm-hmm. I think the first year I was in the gang unit, I made more in overtime than I made in my actual salary.
Whoa.
Just going out on every shooting and everything that we had. And then you just kind of learn how to talk to people and how to develop relationships. And like I told you before, you start developing those relationships. I say relationships. That's not a good word, I guess. But you start talking and giving mutual respect to the person, not to the game, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't appreciate what they did, but I can talk to you as an individual. Mm-hmm. And we did get, believe it or not, we did get a lot of kickback from our own officers in the department.
Why?
I think egos and jealousy a lot of times with type A personalities, but there was a misconception that we agreed with what they were doing. I'll give you a great example. I was kind of assigned the blood gangs at the time, and so I got to know them all. And there was an individual that was the leader of the blood gangs named Brandon Muhammad. B100 was his nickname. Everybody had nicknames then, right? Mm-hmm. Brandon was very smart, mm-hmm. very charismatic, he was a leader. He really was a leader. And his area, which is what we call now Germantown, like that was where the Salem Town Bloods resided. Wasn't anything like it is now.
I remember.
Yeah.
That's why it's crazy.
Yeah.
When you go over there and there's like girls in leggings with like dogs.
Airbnbs and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I got to know Brandon on several different occasions. And there was several times where we would be called out on a homicide, mm-hmm. and the homicide detectives would be there, or the precinct detectives would be there, and none of the gang members would talk to them, mm-hmm. but they would talk to us. And so we would arrive, and they would walk right over to us and say, "Hey, you might want to check on little Pookie or something. He might know something about that or something like that." So it was like that. Why won't they talk to us? But when they do bring a suspect, a gang member into an interview room, they sit across from them like I'm sitting across from you, going, "You're stupid for being in a gang. Your gang members are not going to stand up for you. They're going to roll on you. How dare you?" Just belittling someone. Nobody likes to be belittled. Mm-hmm. If you sat there across from here and just belittled me for what I did, I'm not going to open up to you. Mm-hmm. The difference is, I never try to run a game on anybody. I just talked to them. I never tried to fabricate anything. I told them straight up, listen, I'm not going to ask you if you're in a gang. I know you're in a gang. I'm not going to insult your intelligence. Don't insult mine. You start building that relationship or, that understanding with people. They respond to that. Mm. They're human beings. We're all human beings. I don't care what avenue you go down. We all have that same soul and human, unless we're mentally ill or something along those lines. But people are people, Yeah. And so there was many occasions where there's one particular. I'll tell you the story, and I'll get off this rant. But there was one of Brandon Muhammad's gang members, one of his blood gang members, got jumped at the MTA bus stop. And at that time, the MTA bus stop was right down on Dedrick Street. It was right there in front of TPAC. It wasn't a building. And so information got out that the next day, which was a Friday, all the Bloods were going to come down there and shoot up the place. They were going to fight the Crips that did this, and it was going to be a big melee. Central Precinct got word of it. So the commander there called in mounted patrol. They called in the bikes. They called in the flex teams. They called in all these uniform officers to go down there. And in like a 3-block radius, there was probably 50 officers, Whoa. Not really doing this, but almost like just cracking their knuckles, stretching out, ready to just whip somebody's butt, right? So obviously we got called in, and so we're down there in plain clothes. I mean, of course, I still got my gear on, just in plain clothes. So I see Brandon walking, and there's like 12 guys walking behind him. His blood gang members walking behind him, and they're just coming through the crowd like a centipede,
Really.
And I see him, and then of course the chatter on the radio. All right, we see him. They're here. Everybody get ready. Everybody get. So I intercept him. I come right in front of Brandon. I said, "Hey, let me talk to you for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of looks back. We step to the side. Some of his little lieutenants or whatever in his little group, they kind of step over with him.
Capos and stuff, yeah.
I said, listen, I know why you're here. I would be here too. I'm not going to lie to you. I know why you're here. I respect why you're here. But look around you, dude. These officers are ready to take somebody to jail. They're ready to take your boys. They're waiting for you to do one thing they can rush in and they can act on. Mm-hmm. I said, it's not going to happen today, man. It cannot happen today. And he kind of looks around. I said, all I'm asking you to do is don't do it here. Just go somewhere else. Don't do it today. So he kind of does this, and they all turn around and they all leave. And I got so much flack from officers for that.
Really?
Why did you do that? What did you tell him? What did you say to him? Why didn't like our point to being out here was to prevent this from happening.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. We prevented it from happening. So there was a lack of understanding a lot of times about what our relationship was with these individuals. My philosophy was always build a rapport when they're not in trouble, so that when something happens, and it's going to happen, I have some kind of
trust,
and some kind of collateral that I can pull from. My philosophy in police work has always been deposit and collateral.
I like that.
You deposit enough into the community on positive things so that when tragedy happens, you have enough collateral that you can withdraw that and still have a good standing with the community. That's why you didn't see the outlandish riots that you had in other cities here. And that's why, even though we had one night where it kind of got bad in 2020.
When they attacked the
courthouse or whatever, but most of those people were not from here.
I don't understand.
Most of those people are not from here. Most of those people were shipped in or bussed in or something. But when you talk about...
wait, what do you mean? Go back.
So, professional rioters.
That's real?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
How do you know that?
Well, because you look at the people that you arrest on those incidents, and they're not from here. They're not from our county. They're not from Davidson County. They're not from Tennessee, some of them.
How many people do you think the city arrested that weren't from Davidson County?
On that particular night?
Yeah. Davidson, Williamson, whatever. Surrounding counties.
Oh, I don't know. I know there was quite a few that were at least field interviewed or whatever that weren't from here.
And they just showed up here to riot.
Well, of course. I mean, you look
I still don't understand. I still don't understand it.
I think it's the ideology of people now that just want to protest or just want to riot or just want to be a part of that for whatever reason.
Yeah, I understand. Everyone was upset and rightly so over what happened with George Floyd and all that. I didn't understand.
Well, but to that point, what I was saying is, people from here have a different outlook on the police that are here. And because our department takes so much effort in investing into the community and not just driving through a neighborhood, but stopping and getting out and talking to people. And that's that equity that you build up with the community. Because when things go bad, and listen, we're human beings. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to do things that may even be legal, but they don't look good, right? Mm-hmm. But when those things go bad and people try to push an agenda, we have enough equity built up that the citizens of this city are going to go, hey, we know our guys. It's not going to happen. Yeah. And I get that all the time. I know people come up to me all the time in this city and they're like, hey, we appreciate what you do. Thank you for your service. I know you don't hear it a lot, but thank you for your service. And the reality is, in this city, we do hear it a lot.
As you should.
You should, but in a lot of cities, you don't.
I think a lot of that comes from how awesome of a place Nashville is to live and how incredible it really is as a community. It's a big, small town. It's no place is perfect, but I've traveled most parts of this country, and I can tell you most parts of the country suck.
I agree with that. I think it has a lot to do with that. It has a lot to do also with the men and women that work here. Yeah. And how much they love this job and the people.
I think they take ownership of it is what I'm saying.
They do, and the leadership in this department has really changed over the years for the better and really come into its own of being a proactive leadership. What I mean by that is we're looking at the benefit and the welfare of the employees, not just the citizens. Citizens obviously are our customers. It's what we focus on. The mission of our department is to provide a community-based police product to the citizens of Nashville so they can feel safe, right? So we look at it as a product, but the difference is, that's been the mission statement for years. But the difference is now is we're also looking at the welfare of the officers that are here and investing in those officers and making sure that they're well.
Yeah, as you should. It's the product is what you're providing to the citizenry, but like it's also an investment for like long-term retention of officers, and that's commitment. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not that, I shouldn't say that everywhere else sucks. What I'm trying to say is that like when there's not a lot of opportunity, when there's not a lot of chances to change your socioeconomic status, because of like industries coming and going or different things like that, that does affect the citizenry. And, it's reflected in every aspect of a place. I've just seen places, especially in the Northeast, like where industries have left, like nothing exists anymore, and it's sad.
Yep.
But when I'm here, like everyone is invested in the success of Nashville.
This is a thriving city.
It is.
It's really thriving.
It really is.
More so than it ever has, I think.
Yeah, I think it's only just beginning too, personally.
Yeah, I agree.
Like there's a reason there's 2 Amazons 45 minutes away. There's a reason that Amazon made one of their headquarters here, the Yards thing they're building, Asurion, Oracle, all those things. It's because the future's bright here. Right? And it's because of the people that are here.
Yeah.
I know it. All that to say, I do miss when Tootsie's was the biggest building downtown.
That's true.
That was cool.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird that it's not, and then there's like these highly commercialized places.
But because of that, there are also places that are smaller that nobody knows about that are now kind of locals. Yeah. The local, for instance, I don't know if you know what that is out by Vanderbilt, but there's places that you can go to that no one knows about that, that are still kind of quaint, which I really like.
No, that's the way it's supposed to be. But it's just, at the same time, though, when they leveled all that stuff to make the 1230 Club and that whole little thing.
5th and Broad, yeah.
Yeah, 5th and Broad. That was the old Performing Arts Center. It
was the old Civic Center, yeah.
Yeah, nothing was happening with that.
Yeah.
So, like, it's good and bad. They brought in a lot of jobs. They brought in a lot of revenue and, like, continues to grow. But, like, I don't know. It's weird because most of my, how can I say, I'm trying to think of the best way to word this. A few years ago, one of my friends asked me why all of our friends from the military or just in general come to Nashville, and I just said something to the effect of like, because it's really cool.
Yeah.
And that's
I think it has,
people come here naturally on their own.
It has a small town feel with the big town benefits.
Yeah.
And we can complain about traffic all day long, and that's not going to change. It's just, I think our new mayor is really focusing on the transit problem that we have. And it's one of those twofolds. It's a problem, yes, but it's also a blessing because we're growing and
Most places aren't growing.
The economy is doing very well here.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited about what's coming. I mean, I know I'm hoping to work about another 7 years in this job and get 30 years out of it and see a Super Bowl happen here in Nashville. And,
that's it.
Those kind of things are exciting on the horizon. But it still has a small town feel to it. Really.
Yeah. And all of those things, all of those moments, all of those stories, all of those events, they led you to the place where you found the smoking gun in Music City.
And even in that book, to that point, Nashville is a character in the book. And that comes from the love I have of this city that I've always had. And I kind of tried to write it in the fact that Nashville itself is kind of its own entity. Every address, every street, every location in this book is an actual address, a street, a location you go to. Yeah.
Like
so
what?
If you're reading the book and I give the address, for instance, the prologue of the book starts off with a break into an animal hospital. It gives the address and it's actually out on Knowlesville Road. It's actually the hospital.
For real?
And yeah, so and I can tell you what that came from. So
you use real incidents in your life and change and shape them. They're like what?
Some of them, yes. I mean, okay. So the story itself is fictional.
Yeah.
But what I try to do here, and let me back up a little bit. First off, I don't profess to be an author. I mean, I never set out to be a writer or anything along those lines. My buddy Jim Becker, who was my college roommate, he was the writer. He was always the writer. Jim and I are best friends. He lost his battle with cancer Christmas Eve last year.
I'm so sorry.
He was one of the first ones that read a lot of the manuscript that I had, gave me some insight on it, and he's actually a character in the book. I actually put him in the book as well as a character. But when I was living in California, we talked about being an internship out in California. I started reading an author named Jonathan Kellerman, who has a book series, and his main character is named Alex Delaware, who is a child psychologist out in L.A. And what I found fascinating about Mr. Kellerman's books was as you read those books in L.A., he talks about driving down Sepulveda and taking a left on Sunset, or going to this restaurant, and as you're driving around, you see that. Like I remember I'm reading the book, I'm just into the book, just reading it, can't put it down. And then I'm driving from Hermosa Beach, where I was living, to Hollywood, where I was working, seeing these locations and thinking, oh man, I wonder if Alex Delaware is around here, the character from this book.
Yeah.
And I always thought, man, if I could ever write, I would love to write a book in Nashville, because I love Nashville so much and I know the ins and outs of Nashville so much. I would love to write something to do that. So that was one of the inspirations for how I tried to write that. If I succeeded in that is yet to be known. The book's only been out for a month, so I don't know if it's successful. But
it is successful because you wrote something, you made something.
Well, I did. It's successful for me. I'm just talking about trying to meet that expectations of what I wanted to do. So secondly, 23 years of this job, you've seen a lot of stuff. I've seen a lot of stuff. I mean,
I can only imagine.
A lot of the calls for service, some that I spoke about today, some I haven't. So I try to integrate some of that in there. And I tried to tell a fictional story and interweave it so much with the reality of the fantastic department that we have here that's just top of the line police department. Some of my friends that are on the police department are actually characters in the book. I just put them in there because I wanted it to kind of feel like it was actually happening. The two main characters are fictional. Eric Cade is the main homicide detective. Maria Ortega is his partner. And I have people that have read it and they go, hey, this guy, Lieutenant Mitchell that you have in there, fictional character, not supposed to be anybody real. They're like, who is that written after? Who is that in the part was written after? And it's not written after one particular person, but you being in the military, me being in the police department, certain leaders, certain people that have been promoted out of their means, that it's just a combination of a bunch of different people where you can go, I know somebody that's kind of like that. I know somebody that's kind of like that. Yeah. So that's kind of how it was. And in a good story, you have to have that conflict. In a good story, you have to have those characters that are idiots in some facets and smart in some others. So that's kind of what that was about.
Because they're all tools to move the story forward.
Sure. Yeah. And that was the thing with that. So the way this came about, I had this story in my head. When I was working Central Midnights, I started thinking about this story and pretty much wrote the entire story in my head. Had the whole thing mapped out in my head. And I have a friend that she was a full-time editor. She's done a lot of New York best-selling books. I mean, she's really good at what she does. Named Blake Layers. And we went on vacation. Her family, my family, a couple other families went on a cruise in 2022. We were supposed to go in 2020, but everything, COVID, everything got pushed back. Finally went in 2022. And I had this story in my head. So on the beach at Grand Turks, I'm sitting down with Blake and I'm like, hey, let me tell you the story. Tell me what you think about it. And I told her from beginning to end, like pretty much the entire kind of story. And she said, you need to go home and start writing. I'm like, I'm not a writer. I don't know how to do that. She goes, just start writing. Who cares if it's bad? Just start writing. So I got back in April 2022 and I started writing and couldn't quit. Just kept writing and writing and writing. I'd read a lot of books. I'm an avid reader. I love reading. One of my favorite authors of all times is a guy named Ed McBain. It's a pseudo for Evan Hunter. And Ed McBain started writing books in 1955 on a fictional 87th precinct. Okay, so his books are about the 87th precinct, which is a fictitious New York precinct. And he started writing in 1955. The first book he wrote was Cop Hater. So it has 7 detectives in this 87th precinct. Ed McBain wrote a book, at least one, maybe 2 or 3 each year until he died in 2005, right? Whoa. He's got I think it's close to 55 books. I own every one of them. I have some that are autographed. He passed away in 2005.
How many did he write?
I think 55 is what he wrote.
Lord have mercy.
But a lot of these books are what I call the yellow page books. They're the little small, 100 pages, 200 pages, little stories. The great thing, the unique thing about his series is none of the detectives age. Like police technology ages around them, but they're the same age from 1955 until 2005. The same detectives. And dude, I started reading those and just couldn't quit and kept reading those. And then of course, kept reading Jonathan Kellerman a lot. And then I got Michael Connelly came on in 2002 when he started writing the Bosch books.
Those are incredible. I read those overseas.
Yeah, The Black Echo was his first book that actually won his first novel and won awards. And I mean, ever since I started reading, I couldn't stop.
Did you like the Bosch series?
Yeah,
So
it was,
good.
It was so good. And in the books, obviously, what does everybody say? The books are so much better. But,
Well,
but
yeah,
I
because-
think Amazon did a phenomenal job on the series.
Well, he was a producer on it, I believe.
Yeah, I think it was so good. And then of course Lee Childs, and now Andrew Childs is taking over some of that. So I read a lot for pleasure, read a lot for historical stuff too. But so I kind of knew what a book was supposed to look like, you know, but I had no idea how to do it. So here locally, Ingram Publishing is out of Laverne, local.
Yeah.
They have
Small organization.
Right. They have a division called Ingram Spark that is a self-promotion or self-publishing onslaught. Or, you know, and I have a buddy that works for Ingram Spark. He's like, hey, you need to try our book out. Because what I was running into was I had a finished manuscript that was not very good. I mean, it was good, but, you know, needed a lot of work. So I started looking for editors. How much does an editor cost? You know, professional editor. Like how much do I have to pay to get somebody to read it, edit it, grammar, content, all this kind of stuff. And my friend Blake at the time, who was an editor, she's like, hey, I'll help you out, but I've just taken a new job and, you know, I don't have a lot of time. So about $5,000, $3,000 or $5,000. I don't have that money, you know. So I'm like, man, I got a lot of friends that English professors, creative writing instructors, like Blake, the editor. How can I do this way? So I got on Ingram Spark, started looking at it, and when I went to like the FedEx store, I'm like, hey, how much would it cost to print off this manuscript? You know, it was like, I don't know, $97 for one copy of it because it's front and back, 8 by 10, you know, 400 pages. I don't know, 200 pages, whatever it was. Not very feasible.
Yeah.
But Ingram Spark's like, hey, listen, go through our publishing, submit it as a book, and you can print copies for like $7 each. Well, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. I said, it's not finished. Like, it's fine. You know, you can update it and fix it. So what I did, and I got this too here. So this is what I called a ghost copy.
Okay.
So this is the original, like I finished the manuscript in October of 2022, formulated into some sort of book format. And the thing with self-publishing is they're going to publish whatever you submit.
Yeah.
Like they don't go through and they don't fix it. They don't change the font or the spacing or anything like that. So I got this genius idea. Instead of paying $5,000 for an editor, I'm going to spend $80, print off 8 copies of that book, and hand it out to 8 different people that I trust, that are heavy-handed with the pen. Some that are cops, some that are not, some that are creative writing instructors, some that are English professors.
Yeah, and you had to mark it up.
And I gave them a red pen or blue pen with them.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, just make notations in it. Yeah.
Smart.
And so that's what they did. And man, that's one of the best things I think I ever did. I think that was more rewarding for me than anything, because as they finished it, they would say, hey, I'm done. I was like, okay, let's go down to, there's a little place out South Nashville called Deep South. It's a little craft beer place, real quiet, real fun place. Let's meet down there. And we'd sit down and for 2 hours, we'd just go over every page and we'd talk about it. And had some really good feedback. It really changed this into this, and then started formulating it, and you know, and turned up with this product that's here, and I'm very proud of it. But I'll tell you this.
It's the first of many, it seems.
Yeah, I've got, so I'm like 20 chapters in the second one now.
What's it, Eric Cade? Eric Cade.
Yeah.
I like, that's a good name.
And the funny thing is, initially, his name was Eric House. That was his name.
Why? How do you come to the names?
I don't know. House just fit. But the more I wrote, the more I kept thinking of the show House and the English actor Hugh Laurie that plays House.
Yeah, everyone has lupus.
Right.
Yeah,
And
that's the joke.
Yeah, lupus. Yeah. And the medical bills for that seeing House were astronomical. But so I went round and round with that. I'm like, I don't want to use House because it fits. And even some of the early the early manuscript is still Eric House in there. So I tried to kind of come up with different names, and Cade was one that I kind of came across, and I got a friend, her son's named Cade, so I'll spell it the same way and put it in there. So
nice.
I really tried to shout out to a lot of people that mean a lot to me over my years. Matter of fact, I mentioned my buddy Widener, who's deputy chief. His father and my father were both firemen. So there's a chapter in here where there's two firemen on a boat. It's my dad and his dad. I'd use their names in there, and just little things like that it's just kind of a way. And listen, I don't know the first thing about being a published author. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how Michael Connelly does it. I don't know how Jonathan Kellerman does it. I don't know what the ins and outs are. I just know how I did it, and I'm just putting it out there.
Well, that's what's most important.
Yeah, but
I've always wanted to write a book, and
just do it, man.
I know. I mean, and this is not I just think it's cool to look at something that you made.
Well, I'm going to tell you what it feels like.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you exactly what it feels like. So it got published on October 31st this year, right? And leading up to that, it was like I kept going back. I would go back and I would be like, okay. I was like, oh my gosh, that's not what I want. And I'd have to go in and I would have to change the manuscript and then resubmit it into Amazon Direct and Ingram Spark. And I only had up until October 25th to do that. So like the morning of October 25th, I'm submitting little things that I found, So finally I submitted, and it's like you have to let go of it, right?
Yeah.
And when it went live on Amazon, it felt like I put ding-dong pictures on the internet of myself and just waiting for people to critique it. That's exactly how it felt. I felt like there were nude pictures of me all across the internet, and now I have to sit back and wait for people to critique it.
Yeah.
And I still feel that way. I mean, I think I've sold maybe 100 copies as of now. I've got some really good feedback, really good reviews from some people I know and some people I don't know.
Yeah.
One of the best feelings that I've had so far is I was sitting at Deep South, my little craft beer place, having a beer one night. And my buddy, Paul Smith, who was the driver in the car, we got ambushed. He was the driver. He's in the book. I've got him in the book as well. He calls me. He's like, dude, I just finished your book, man. And I felt like I needed to send an email to Detective Cade and Ortega and tell them what the heck's going on in this book, because they were just kind of missing these cues, And we talked about it for, 15, 20 minutes. And just hearing someone, and this has happened several times, want to discuss something that I've created and it's come out of my head and it's on paper and it's surreal, that this is all just something that I made up that kind of came together and people are invested in it. And I had one guy tell me, he goes, I've only read a little bit of your book, but I kind of looking at homeless people a little different,
That's incredible.
And that says
that's
a lot
what art
too.
is supposed to do.
Yeah, it is. It's supposed to influence and change your opinion on something. And that's the thing here. Like,
which is what we're missing so much from our country right now.
Yeah,
we're having talking heads, like people be like going,
well, you want to criticize something so much more than you want to let it move you.
Yeah, we wonder why people don't have any nuanced thoughts anymore about stuff, but we have these talking head, news television shows, which are just, they're absolute poison to the soul of the American world. I like this color tie, I like that color tie, and I like skewing stuff. Like, well, it's all horrible.
It's taught me to not be so critical of someone taking a chance.
Yeah. And
when you put yourself out there, it changes your whole ideas about that very thing.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to find like a song and someone releases a song, you're like, I don't like that song.
There's a reason there's a difference between the amount of people on a stage or on a field and the people in the stands.
Oh, yeah.
Win, lose, or draw, no matter whatever happens with anything I've ever done, I will always, to my detriment, I feel,
it was,
try.
Again, going back to this, but Lou Gehrig's speech back in 1927, when he says, I feel like the luckiest person in the world, how can you not feel so lucky to be surrounded by so many people that are on this field right now? Even though this is a man that would die 2 months later from his disease, he to understand how lucky and fortunate he is to have that happen. And I think, with something like this, man, it may go nowhere, but it's somewhere. You know what I'm saying?
It's already where it needs to be.
And
it's
when I'm long gone, my kid will have something to say. Hey, this is some words that my dad put
This is
down.
your man in the arena moment.
Yeah.
Everyone on the outside will say something. Who cares? That's what they exist for.
You know, I've learned, especially in this police work, I've learned a long time ago not to look at comments, not look at So if we have a shooting or something that happens, or George Floyd, whatever it is, whatever happens in this city, I tell the young officers, never read the news comments. Never, after the news article's over, never scroll down and read the comments. Especially when it's dealing with one of your coworkers or dealing with you or something. Just let it go. You can't invest in that kind of stuff, man. You gotta be above that.
It just doesn't work.
Yeah, and I know there's going to be people that don't like it. I get it. That's fine. You know, I know there's going to be people that absolutely love it because they know me. I'm just looking for people just to give it a chance, you know, and just because I just got back to where I could start reading again because I haven't been able to read for a year. You know,
you've been consumed with doing
I've just been consumed with that, and trust me, I'm tired of reading this one. I mean, I've read this one a lot. I'm tired of it.
It's funny. I know what you're talking about. Like in the creative, you go back and you look at it. You're like, that was such a dumb thing.
Yeah, there was always a joke in art school that you need two people to complete a painting, one to start it and one to tell them to stop. You know, and that's just kind of how it is. And it's the same thing with this, because even yesterday I was having a conversation. Man, there's like 3 sentences I want to put in here that would explain something. There's 2 things that I want to go back and I could. I mean, I could go this afternoon on my manuscript, put those sentences in, go to Amazon, include it. 4 days from now, they're going to print the new copies of it. I have that in there. It's not a big deal. But at some point, I got to move on and say, this is how it is, and I'm going to move on and start with this other one. And I think the second story that I'm working on now is even better than the first one. I'm enjoying writing it better.
That's awesome.
And when I finished this one, I was like, what am I going to write about next? And
it'll come to you.
It did.
The creative finds a way.
It really did. And some of it is, so as I'm writing this last year or whatever, there's a couple of things that really happen, like that I go out on that just fit into the book, and I just wrote them in there. I just changed the ending of those to fit and to match. And I don't want to give anything away in it, but kind of one of the climax points in the book where the detective has to work an assignment other than the homicide assignment down on Broadway. All the events that happen in the book actually happened to me one night last year when I was working EDI. And I was able to just kind of use it and put it into the book and kind of make it a pivotal point in the book as well. So it's pretty cool in that aspect of it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I can't thank you enough for coming and talking to me today. It's
I appreciate
incredible.
you giving me the opportunity.
This is perfect. Absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for all the stuff you've done for our city and continue to do so. Everyone needs to go out and pick up a copy as soon as possible of The Smoking Gun in Music City by Gerry Hyder. Thank you so much for joining us here.
Appreciate it.
Pleasure of mine. And we'll see you next time.